Hey everyone, it's Jonathan, and today we've got another sort of a bonus episode for you. This is part of a two-part episode I did several years ago on my main podcast talking about Jim Henson's The Dark Crystal. In this episode, we're going to be talking about the 2019 prequel series, Age of Resistance, and I should say before we get into it, since we have a whole discussion at the end, in case you didn't know, Age of Resistance was in fact cancelled. At the time we recorded, they hadn't announced it yet, so that's ambiguous in our discussion, but I figured I should probably say something, just in case you didn't know. Sorry to break the news. And like I said last week, these episodes are going to be part of a future Muppet series on the podcast, and anything Jim Henson related will be part of the series, regardless of whether it's Disney or not. So I wanted to make sure to give you any episodes I've made in the past for my other podcasts that would count. Okay, let's get into our discussion on The Dark Crystal, Age of Resistance. Hey everyone, it's Jonathan, and welcome back to iHeart Movies. Or maybe in this case, iHeart Television? iHeart TV? I'll figure it out. Anyway, today I'm joined once more by my friend Steven Mannasse to talk about The Dark Crystal. This time we're going to be finishing up our discussion, and we're talking about last year's prequel to The Dark Crystal, Netflix's 10-episode series The Dark Crystal, Age of Resistance. If you missed the first episode on the original 1982 film, make sure to check that out before listening to this one. Anyway, let's get into this episode talking about The Dark Crystal, Age of Resistance with Steven Mannasse.
When they start off the show, they do talk about how the crystal of truth was corrupted and became the dark crystal, but they don't mention anything about the shard. If I'm not mistaken, the shard is discovered at the very, very end of the first season.
I'm not sure what the timeline was on that. I feel like I saw the shard, but now that I'm trying to think of it, I don't remember the exact
I think I think the shard was talked about closer to the end because it wasn't mentioned in the beginning.
Okay.
They basically talked about the fact that the crystal was getting corrupted by the Skeksis. That's basically what they said.
Yeah. And they had I'm trying to remember the name of the character. The character was never seen on screen, and it was basically the narrator.
Right.
The myth speaker.
Right.
That's the character. Sigourney Weaver voiced the myth speaker.
Yes, Sigourney Weaver, which made me so happy that she was there. I'm like, yes, Sigourney Weaver screams 1980s fantasy. I'm glad that she's there.
Yeah, she was perfect.
That's right. I forgot about that. Sigourney Weaver.
Yeah, she was the perfect person to get for this character.
For sure.
I love the quality of her voice.
Yeah, she's got a great voice. You know it's her when you hear her.
Mm-hmm. Augur was voiced by Donna Kimball in the series.
Right. I remember Kimball. But so I think the difference between the TV show and the film is the narrator, or as we said earlier, the myth speaker. Sigourney Weaver gives us a lot more of the lay of the land. Like, they really go deep into it. Like, they tell us about the fact that Gelflings are everywhere. The fact that the Gelflings were tricked by the Skeksis, and basically they get divided up into 6 individual kingdoms, and they basically do the bidding of the Skeksis. So the Skeksis have secretly divided the Gelflings because this is sort of like the DreamWorks and the Bugs Life ants stuff. Basically, it's like, we have to keep the ants in line because if they realize that there's more of them, they're gonna topple us because we're so few. And that's what the Skeksis were afraid of. The problem was when we obviously found out now that the Mystics and the Skeksis were one being at one point split into 2, the Skeksis became extremely power hungry, and they didn't want to lose that power. And the Gelfling could very much be the race or the species that rules over their land, but they wanted the power, so that's what they did. First of all, the thing that really impressed me about the Age of Resistance was how much of a budget they were given, because a show that risky, it's rare to actually be given so much of an opportunity to really turn it into something special. But, ever since the Dark Crystal became the film that it is. Like, it really went into cult status and developed this massive, massive following. I mean, graphic novels and even other kinds of merchandise and books about the lore have just been written throughout the years. So the fact that now Netflix was giving the Henson Company the opportunity to finally give these fans what they were wanting, which was the rest of the story that people had just been writing about. The fact that they were given all of this opportunity, all of this money, the ability to get all of these great names. I mean, knowing that Mark Hamill is now connected to this is just so happy for me. Like, everything that Mark Hamill gets attached to makes me very happy. So I loved it. I loved all the voices. I still, I was just doing my Oscar snubs video for my channel, which is going to be on my channel later this week. And I talked about the fact that Awkwafina didn't get nominated. And I mentioned that she lends her voice in Age of Resistance, which is great. Absolutely great. And Taron Egerton and even Game of Thrones cast members as well. It's a whole amazing production that brings so many loves of so many other fantasy franchises together in this. That's what makes it so special, I think.
Yeah, the casting was perfect. Normally, I don't particularly care if they go with like a big name voice cast for things, but I think that they did this in such a way that it really added to it. They found people who were perfect for it rather than just saying, well, we need these many big names attached to our project to get people to notice it. They just went for people who actually sounded good in the role, and it worked great.
Exactly. I mean, there was so much experience from other projects for some of these actors. I mean, especially for the cast members, Natalie Emanuel, who voices my favorite character on Age of Resistance, Deet. Like, I love the fact that she's there. She's from Game of Thrones. Lena Headey is on the show as well. She's from Game of Thrones. So, there were so many people that were parts of this cast that had done so much that was in the realm of science fiction and fantasy. So it was sort of like a homecoming for them,
Yeah.
And Simon Pegg's done a great deal. He's done Star Trek. He's done Paul. He's done the Edgar Wright film. So, like, each and every one of them definitely had a love for this. I watched the special features when Taron Egerton got the call about being attached to a Dark Crystal project. He said, I don't care what he didn't say it to the person, but he said yes without even knowing what it was about. He just said, Dark Crystal, that's all I care about.
Yeah, that's great. You got to have people who want to be a part of it for the project.
Exactly.
It makes it so much better when people actually care about what they're working on.
That's why The Lord of the Rings was so successful. I mean, you had Christopher Lee, who read the books every single year of his life. So, the fact that you had that's what it is. It's like when when Zack Snyder makes a comic book movie. He's a comic book reader, a comic book fan. Duncan Jones directed the Warcraft film because he was a player of the game. He loves the lore. There's just something special when you get someone who has a passion for the medium itself. They just add a lot more of their own personal fandom and tender love and care into those projects. And that's why I think The Age of Resistance was so successful in regards to its production, and all the people that watched it were just Jim Henson fans in general and Dark Crystal fans. So that's why it was. I'll say this, I really thought that if I was going to name the best television show of last season, I really thought that it was going to go to Stranger Things. But then this came along, and I just thought it was the most brilliant thing I ever watched.
Yeah, I've been saying I wish that this. Not because I wanted to be shorter, but I wish this were a movie just because I want to say that this is the best movie of last year because it really felt like a good long movie instead of a television series.
Yeah.
And I feel like it deserves all the praise that a movie would get.
Yeah, and you also have to be so happy that they really stuck to the practical effects and the puppeteering. Yes. And also, the blending of the practical effects and the CGI was beautiful. Like, the big CGI worlds were just beautiful to look at. And even those small scenes where some of the characters were CGI, it was almost flawless. It was incredible how they did it all. It really was.
Yeah, they did such a good job. And they had that behind the scenes thing where it talked about how they made it. And it showed like some clips of what it would have been if it had been all CGI. And it looked good, but not in the same way that the practical effects look good. It looked good for an animated TV series, but the practical effects, they just add something to it. It just makes it so much better, so much more believable, so much more real than the CGI does. And like, I don't mind CGI, but I love the practical effects. They just look so good.
Yeah, there's something about human nature that we like something that is tangible, like the feeling that we have the ability to actually, reach out and grab it. It's
Mm-hmm.
why people, even to this day, last year, Sesame Street celebrated its 50th anniversary. It's like when Elmo shows up on the Today Show or if Cookie Monster shows up on Good Morning America. It's just like, even though we know there are people moving those mouths and flapping those hands, we still don't see that. We see
Yeah.
something real. We truly feel that these puppets are actual things filled with a soul. It's incredible,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah. I love it when they do that. I just like, even though I don't watch Sesame Street anymore, I love
Yeah.
it when all those characters show up in just random places, just random YouTube channels, random morning shows, random late night shows. It, I love that.
I mean, come on, those recent farmers insurance commercials with the Sesame Street gang. Those are so much fun to watch. And my wife and I, every single time they were on, we loved how Bert dressed up like J.K. Simmons on the commercials. We
Uh-huh.
loved that. Actually, if you looked really close at his suit in the commercial, he doesn't have a farmer's pin like J.K. Simmons. He has a Sesame Street pin on his jacket, which is really, really funny. But
I
I
don't
but
think
I
I
like what they
noticed
did.
that.
Yeah, I noticed that just by watching that commercial just so many times. And my wife just sent me a video. It's actually on YouTube where you have a couple of Sesame Street cast members doing impressions of other Sesame Street cast members, and
I think I saw that one.
it's really funny. It's
Yeah.
very funny. But that's what I love. I love the fact that even though some of these cast members who were part of Jim Henson's original lineup are not here or just retired, it's also really nice to see that the next generation just has such a love
Mm-hmm.
for what Jim Henson originally put together and how they're trying so hard to be what Jim Henson was. I mean, I already mentioned Fraggle Rock, but the thing that was so interesting about Fraggle Rock was that show was put together with the second generation of Muppeteers, minus David Goles, who of course does Gonzo. But that really gave Jerry Nelson and Steve Whitmire a real chance to shine because they were not there originally when the Muppet Show first came out or when Kermit was created and doing things on the Ed Sullivan Show. Those were things that came a little bit later. And obviously, that was when Rizzo the Rat was introduced in the 80s. So the 80s gave us that new wave. And now we're seeing this newer wave, this third generation of Muppeteers coming and lending their voices to the Muppets of Sesame Street and the regular Jim Henson Muppets. And now, all these new puppeteers that are doing the Dark Crystal. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know if any of them were actually part of the new Muppet crew, but regardless, it's just nice to see that these people who grew up with this ingenious style of puppetry really wants to keep that legacy alive.
Yeah.
And along with that, I don't mind CGI either. I want to just bring up a little bit more as to what you said, but you know, 2D animation or stop motion animation and puppet work, I think that there is now a massive craving for it in the
Yeah.
in the CGI world that we're living in. I mean, the fact that Missing Link, the new Leica film, just won the Golden Globe for best
Mm-hmm.
picture in animation. The fact that that and Klaus have been nominated for the Oscar for best animated feature, there's something happening here. I think people are trying to bring themselves back in regards to family entertainment to simpler times because I think that there was a
Mm-hmm.
connection there.
Yeah. I've said, like, I know a lot of people online get like really hyped up about 2D animation versus 3D animation, And I guess I technically do prefer 2D animation, but I want a good story. And I think at the end of the day,
Exactly.
that's the most important thing. And I love that they're trying to tell good stories using the stuff that they used to use in the past, like puppetry and stop motion and the 2D animation. I love that that's all coming back
Yeah.
because I feel like I don't want to paint with a broad brush like every studio, but I feel like a lot of CGI animated features these days, they kind of feel like they're getting lazy with a lot of stuff. The storytelling, it just doesn't feel as good as it used to. Like, I'm not talking about Pixar, of course, because Pixar does the best as they can do with everything they do.
Yeah.
But a lot of other movies, it just feels like they're cutting corners, and it just doesn't feel. I don't know. It doesn't feel like they're making it with the love, I guess, that
Well,
older storytellers like Jim Henson used to do.
Well, I will actually be a little bit bold, and I would actually disagree with you for a little bit on regards to Pixar because I think there was a point in time where Pixar got a little lazy themselves, and it was around the time when they were really making a lot more sequels and prequels, and rather than focusing on new and original stories. Like, I think probably when they were like, I think Brave is good, but I don't think Brave is great. And I could say the
Uh-huh.
same thing about Monsters University. And there were times when they really surprised me, like Finding Dory. Was it a sequel that needed to be made? No. But did they give me an excellent film? They definitely did. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I think that Toy Story 4, that's a movie that could be there's a real like dividing line in regards to that one, because if that was never made, no one would have lost sleep over it. But they tried their very best to make it something special. And
Mm-hmm.
I think Incredibles 2, 14 years to get a sequel and you get a great sequel,
Yeah.
that's like something that very few people do. But, I think that DreamWorks got a very, very lazy during its
Mm-hmm.
time. But then when you see what they did with the How to Train Your Dragon trilogy, I mean, that's a
Yeah.
beautiful story, absolutely beautiful. And even DreamWorks themselves seems to be back on the rise now, because I didn't see it in theaters, but I heard a lot of really good things about Abominable. I heard a lot of people really liked it.
So, since we don't have time to talk about all of the different plot points over 10 episodes,
Hmm.
we should probably touch on the characters, like the
Absolutely.
new characters for the series.
Yes.
I think probably to pick a favorite, it's probably for me going to be Deet. I
It's
love
it's
Deet.
it's deep for me too, because if we could really sum it all up, it's pretty much three main characters that at the end unite and are about to start the revolution. We have
Mhm.
Brea's story, and of course, Brea is voiced by Anna Taylor-Joy. And then there's, I forgot, was it Rain or Ran? I forgot. I think it's Ran.
Rian.
Rian, right. And that's, of course, Taron Egerton. There's his story, and then there's Deet's story.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, it's those three are the ones that are going to break the spell that the Gelflings are all under, the Skeksis, and they're going to unite them, and they're going to rise up against Skeksis. But clearly, you and I know that's not really what
Yeah.
happened. Or is it? We don't know, because we still don't know how much time has passed.
Yeah. And another thing that had briefly crossed my mind while watching the show, there was some line by Agra saying something about the story could have many endings, or there were many ways it could play out. So I
Right.
was kind of wondering, are they going to go with like an alternate universe route and give a different ending than the Dark Crystal? Which I guess is possible. I don't know how I would feel about that. I don't think I would hate it, but I kind of want to see how they would get there instead of making up a new ending.
Yeah,
But
that would be interesting.
that's just one almost throwaway line that gave me that idea. So I don't know if that's even a thing that they're thinking about. But it just seemed like the line was too specific and pointed to be nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Just the way they said that there were many paths or many ways that it could play out or something like that.
Right. And the other thing that I really liked about the show was, even though Deet is such a fantastic character, I think the story that I really liked the most was Brea's story
Yeah, me
because
too.
of the complexities of royalty. And I also really grew to love Celebron at the end of it because of the fact that she redeemed herself. That was a very hard
Celadon.
story. I'm sorry, Celadon. I'm sorry.
I watched it very recently, so that's why I'm remembering the names better.
Right, I'm sorry. I don't know why I called her Celebron. Celadon, yeah, she was such a tragic. She was really, if you really think about it, she is the reason why Brea became what she is.
Yeah.
It was like the real driving force, and I really loved the fact that it was the story of a family, and that they showed the fallen hero, the fact that one gets extremely corrupt and one breaks free of the corruption, and the fact that it takes the hardest events to take place to actually show someone the error of their ways. I just thought that was such a deep thing to see, and especially for a show that's supposed to be family oriented. Like, I appreciate that they
Yeah.
show the importance of family.
Yeah, they got really deep with that storyline. Like, I did not expect it to go as deep and as dark as it did. I really didn't expect her to like fully embrace the Skeksis before actually realizing how bad they were. I expected her to like wake up a lot sooner. But I liked that they had her go so dark before realizing the error of her ways. I feel
Yeah,
like that made her I feel like that made her story, her redemption, so much better
yeah.
than it would have been.
Yeah, especially since she killed her mother. I mean, like, that was like a
Yes.
shocker. I mean, and also her mother was voiced by Helena Bonham Carter. That was also
Yes.
pretty awesome. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. I really liked the whole thing with the Madras and the All Madra. Yeah, I thought it was a really interesting society that they set up.
Yeah,
Having
absolutely.
having the one queen rule over all the other queens. I really liked that. It was not something I think I've ever seen before, and it just seemed so like such a great idea for a setting like this.
Yeah, it's definitely a very complex kind of thing. I mean, it's sort of similar to Game of Thrones. Once again, it's why I always connected with Game of Thrones, because even though there are 7 kingdoms, there is only one that sits on the Iron Throne, which is supposed to be the king that rules over all the kings. So it's very
Okay.
similar to that.
Yeah, it is because there's 7 kingdoms of Gelfling.
Exactly. Like I said, I really believe that this is the family Game of Thrones. It's a family version of Game of Thrones because it has such it just has a very similar vibe to it, at least for the bare bones. I mean, obviously, did you watch Game of Thrones?
No.
Okay, so it's definitely not exactly the same as Game of
Yeah.
Thrones, but it's definitely similar in regards to the royalty system.
Yeah.
Very similar.
Yeah. I haven't watched Game of Thrones, but I've read enough about it that I know what I can get the references.
Yeah.
It really didn't seem like something that I wanted to watch. I don't
Yeah.
like things to go too gruesome,
Yeah.
and I knew that that one was gonna it was gonna be too much, so I just
Yeah.
never even got into it.
And one of the other things that I really like about the series is the fact that each Gelfling tribe is is in a totally different kind of environment. I
Yeah,
really
yeah,
like that. And that's one of the other tricks that the Skeksis played upon the Gelfling in order to try and keep them divided. They basically forced them to live different kinds of lifestyles. And it really wasn't until Bria discovers that little hidden chamber with the Stone Guardian that watches over her for a brief period of time. That's where she basically realizes, wait a minute, all 7 of our tribes, what's our differences? We're just on different parts of this world. We live in different kinds of environments, but at the end of the day, we really are the same.
Yeah.
And we should be one kingdom.
Yeah, there's just so much depth to that story that it was so much more than I expected, and that's probably why I liked it so much, is because it was just so surprising and refreshing how well written all that stuff was.
Yeah, and I mean, Rian's story is just as important to Bria, because what Rian discovers is Rian is the one that knows what the Skeksis are truly up to.
Yeah.
It's Bria who seems to figure it out for herself on a completely different level based on the fact that they're corrupting the Gelflings. But it is Rian who discovers what the Skeksis are doing with the Gelfling essence.
Yeah, because he, at the very beginning, there's another character who it seems like they're setting up to be a main character, Mira, his
yes.
girlfriend.
And I believe that she was voiced by Natalie Dormer.
Let me check.
I think so. I know Natalie Dormer's in the show as well. I'm looking as
Alicia Vikander.
Oh, that's right, Alicia Vikander. That's right. I forgot she was in it as well. She's a very famous actress. She was in Ex Machina, and I believe The Danish Girl as well with Eddie Redmayne. Very famous.
Okay.
Yeah, I forgot Alicia Vikander was in it. Yeah, those are both very good movies. I forgot that she was in this too. So many famous faces. Even Harvey Firestein's in this show.
Yeah.
I was specifically looking to see where Natalie Dormer. Okay, Natalie Dormer was Annika.
Okay, was she the one of the ones in the ships?
Yeah.
Was she the daughter?
I believe so.
Anyway, we were talking about Mira, and I liked how much she was set up in the first episode that you think she's going to be a main character.
Yeah.
And she's given, for as little time as she has, she's given enough character development that you really grow to like her. And then it's so shocking that she ends up being killed by the Skeksis at the end, setting this whole thing off. And I just thought that was really well done. And I don't know if I want to say like brave, but for a show that's ostensibly for kids, to have a character set up like that and then killed off by the end of the first episode, I just thought that was really well written, well done, and well executed.
Well,
just so good.
It's also it's very Game of Thrones-ish, because that's exactly what Game of Thrones does. They get you a character, you love them, and then they kill them off. That's exactly what they do on Game of Thrones.
Yeah. That was another reason that I never really wanted to get into Game of Thrones, because I didn't want to get too attached to someone and have them brutally murdered.
Well, look, you dodged Dark Crystal, and that's what happened to Mira. So
yeah, I don't know if I'm ready for that to happen to the other characters, though. But I'm afraid that's kind of where things are heading.
Yeah, we don't know.
Yeah,
but that's what makes us want to watch.
Yeah. Another character whose story I really liked seeing play out was Agra.
Yes.
You get so much more of her story in this. Because, like I said with the movie, you don't really know a whole lot of what she's about. She's just this weird side character. But in this movie, you find out she's basically, I guess, the spirit of the planet almost.
Yeah.
She's almost like a deity, but not quite. I'm not sure exactly how to describe her, but she's huge in the lore of Thra, the planet that they're all on. And I really liked having her backstory, finding out how much she was tricked by the Skeksis. And basically, I don't want to say she just gave them the planet, but she kind of did.
Yeah.
Almost. Not purposely, not with malicious intent, but she was tricked into giving up her power, or her, I don't know how much she was a ruler, but overseeing the Gelfling in exchange for all this scientific equipment like so that she could see the stars, or I don't know what she was doing, like visiting the stars in her mind, going out into outer space. I don't know exactly what she was doing, but there was all this equipment that they gave her in exchange for the crystal, in exchange for the power. And I really liked having to deal with that when she came back, having to realize how much of this calamity is her fault, and watching her trying to right all the wrongs that she's accidentally done.
Mhm.
Just, I really liked her story.
Yeah, I mean she was a very interesting character. I mean, she also was the comic relief of the show,
Yeah.
which I thought was really cool. But then again, in the movie, she's also very zany and loopy, and she adds a little lightheartedness to the movie itself. But
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, she's basically the other plot point. She is basically on a journey of redemption, and at the same time, she ends up meeting the three Gelflings who she's going to officially help create this age of resistance against the Skeksis. That's basically what her plot was at the end, and at the end, that really was her ultimate way to find her true redemption after everything that she did, because she truthfully feels that she's the reason why the Gelflings were divided. She's the reason why the land is corrupted and dirty, and that's why she did what she did at the end.
Yeah, I just loved the way they wrote her character to have such heart and how deep she was. But then at the same time, like you said, she's just kind of zany and crazy and hilarious. She was so nuanced, and I loved that.
Yeah. Yeah, and the thing that was very interesting to me in regards to the show was how little the Mystics meant in the first season. They really didn't
Yeah.
have a really big role to play. Now, I'm guessing that there's going to be more to them as the show moves on.
Hmm.
But one of the things I really did like about the show was, I can't remember the other one, but there was when the three Gelflings meet that one Skeksis and one Mystic that are
Yes.
actually friends, and the reason
Yes.
why they're friends is because they know the truth. I know that
Yeah.
the Skeksis is the heretic, but I
Yes.
can't seem to. I think the other one has I think his name starts with a U. I'm not exactly sure. Hold on. I can easily find this out because I know that there is a Funko Pop double pack of them. So I can easily find that. Yes. Okay. They are the Heretic and the Wanderer.
Okay, yeah. They were probably two of my favorite characters just because they were both ridiculous, and the whole thing with them doing the puppetry.
Yes.
And I don't know if you know this, but the puppet show that they put on, the way that they did the puppets were like completely different than all the other puppets. They were using a technique that is actually, and they actually got this guy to come in. There's a YouTuber named Barnaby Dixon. Have
Okay.
you heard of him?
No.
He has a puppetry channel. He
Okay.
builds these puppets that he does with both of his hands, usually like this, with
Mm-hmm.
like the legs on one hand and the arms and head on another hand.
Mm-hmm.
And he just does that, and like you can see his whole body in the videos, but he just moves them so realistically. He builds them so well. He has little mechanics to make the hands move. So they got him in to do the puppets for this specific scene. Like he played the body of the heretic when they were puppeteering the little Gelfling puppets.
Mm-hmm.
And I just loved everything that they did with that scene. The way that they built the backgrounds, the puppets, and the fact that they saw this guy on YouTube and decided to hire him for the show, instead of, I guess, ripping off of his ideas and building their own. They actually hired him to come in and do it. I loved everything about all of their scenes.
Well, I just love the fact that it was basically like the ultimate meta moment. Like, it's literally
Yes.
puppets using puppets. I'm like,
Yes.
you've got to be kidding me. Like, this is just the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. Like,
It was so good.
Because you know something, you want to know something? I don't think Jim Henson ever thought of doing something like that. If there was anything that could really take Jim Henson's ideas to the next level, that was it. So simple,
Yeah.
yet so complex all at the same time. I never saw a puppet using a puppet. I thought that was beautiful.
Yeah, no, that was great. It was so good. Plus, then you also have Andy Samberg doing the
Yes,
voice, and I love him on Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
that's one
That's
of
like
my
one of my
favorite
favorite
shows.
sitcoms right now.
Mhm.
He's so hilarious. I love
That
that he
had,
was a
yeah,
heretic.
that entire cast is fantastic. I actually accidentally at my bachelor party met Joe Latruglio at the place where I was having my bachelor party. So I met Boyle. That was the coolest thing ever.
That's very random, but I like
And
that.
he was, yeah, he also was like one of the nicest guys. Very, very
Uh-huh.
nice guy. I mean, like he's a native New Yorker. He grew up in the same borough. He and I, we both grew up in Queens, in completely different parts of Queens, but big Mets fan. So we had something to talk about, him and my friends. It was really nice to actually meet him. He was really, really cool. Very laid back and cool.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Another character that I don't want to say they're like my favorite character because overall they're definitely not. But I loved Aquafina's character.
I just love Aquafina in general.
Yes, that's why I liked the character. It's because it was Aquafina's voice. If they had had anybody else, I don't think I would have cared. I think I would have been too disgusted by all of the snot or pus
Yeah,
or
the
whatever the
pus.
thing
Yeah,
was
that was just
leaking.
gross.
It was so gross, but it was Aquafina. So every time they were on screen, I loved it.
Yeah, and you know something? I've said this so many times in recent weeks. I don't think anybody that brings her onto a project, I really don't think people know what gold that they have. She's such a
Hmm.
versatile actress. I
Yeah.
believe that so many major studios that have already used her talents don't know how to use her talents perfectly. The one time where I saw her being used perfectly, besides Age of Resistance, is Crazy Rich Asians.
That was the first thing I ever saw her in.
I loved her in that film. I didn't
Hmm.
care much for her performance in Ocean's 8, even though she was definitely one of the highlights. But she is one of the funniest comedians out there right now, and they
Hmm.
gotta use her because nobody knows what they're missing.
Yeah, I think I'd heard her name before, but it wasn't until I saw Crazy Rich Asians, which I only saw because that was at the time I had Movie Pass, and I kept hearing how great Crazy Rich Asians was, and I was like, well, I have Movie Pass, I might as well go see it for free.
It's
So
a
I
great
saw it.
movie.
She was my favorite character. I originally only saw it because I really like Fresh Off the Boat, and I
Constance Wu.
yes, I went to see it mainly because I like her, but I walked away with Aquafina having stole the whole movie for me.
No,
I just
you know
loved
what?
her.
You know what? I had been saying on my channel that a great comedy now is so hard to find. You
Hmm.
know, the days of the 90s and the 80s and the early 2000s is gone. There's very, very few 100% true comedies that make me laugh. Last
Hmm.
weekend, this movie is 25 years old, but I watched Tommy Boy last weekend. And that is one of the funniest movies I've ever seen in my entire life. It's so good. And the fact that we have hope with a movie like Crazy Rich Asians, I want to see more great comedies come back. I've
Hmm.
heard I've heard very good things about the movie that came out last year, Good Boys. I heard that was very funny, but I have not laughed at a comedy in a very, very long time. A new comedy. All the
Hmm.
times I get my chuckles now are in animated movies and Marvel movies. That's where all my laughs
Yeah,
are had now.
yeah, that's probably for me too. There's very few comedies that I see a trailer for and I'm like, oh, I got to see this. A lot of times I'll see a trailer and roll my eyes and keep going. It's like I don't really
Crazy
want to see that.
Crazy Rich Asians was something special. It was
Yeah.
very good. It had a good story to it. I'm not even the biggest fan of rom-coms, but
Hmm.
this was a really fun movie. I had a good time with it. And I
Yeah.
also loved the fact that Aquafina's father was played by Ken Jeong. I mean, like, could you be any more perfect in casting?
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody in that movie I felt like was perfectly cast.
Yeah, it was such a great choice. It was such a great film. So,
Yeah.
so good. Michelle Yeoh was incredible in that movie.
Yeah. Everybody was so good in their own way.
Yeah, I just actually watched another movie with her in it. I finally watched Memoirs of a Geisha, and I thought that that movie was brilliant. I thought that she was brilliant. I thought she was brilliant in it.
Hmm. Last week, I finally got around to watching The Farewell with Aquafina.
I haven't seen that yet. I heard it's great.
It is good. It's not as I was hoping for a little bit more comedy, and it is funny in places, but it's a lot more serious. But it's so good. It's really good for what they were going for, and I really like that it was a true story as well.
Mm,
So it's good. I recommend that one. It's
yeah.
not as perfect as Crazy Rich Asians, but I really enjoyed it.
Well, it's a pity that she didn't get nominated for an Oscar. My Oscar snubs video, I do talk about the fact that she didn't get nominated because I think she, even though I hadn't seen it, I mean, like, all I could say was, why didn't you nominate her? It's freaking Aquafina.
Mm, I feel like the Oscars never nominate who I wanted them to nominate.
Yeah, honestly, my biggest surprise was the fact that they didn't nominate Taron Egerton for Rocket Man because I loved him as Elton John. I thought he was perfect. He
I
was
keep
great.
hearing that. I still haven't seen that, but I keep hearing that.
It was one of my favorite movies of 2019. Very, very good. I highly recommend it.
Yeah. Yeah, Oscars, I've stopped really caring. It's like they never nominate who I wanted them to nominate. And of the ones that get picked, I don't really care about them. They never seem to award the right movies. It's like,
Yeah.
eh, whatever.
So I guess one of the questions that I have in regards to this, what did you think about the fact that they brought in the dual glaive? Like that was something that was entirely new in
Hmm.
regards to the mythos of the Dark Crystal.
It felt very Lord of the Rings to me.
I agree. I agree. I think that it was basically I don't know, maybe oh shoot, what is that thing that they call it? A MacGuffin. That's what it was. It felt like a MacGuffin to me.
Kind of. But it also helped them, like, wasn't it the like catalyst for everybody on the planet being able to talk to each other through the fire? I,
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
that's what set that whole thing off. So I think that was basically the reason for the sword. I don't
Hmm.
think it needed to be a sword. It just,
Yeah.
I guess it was maybe it was cooler to them to have this thing be a sword that
I
they
mean
needed to
it
find instead of like a rock
yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I also think that, it probably would have made more sense for, Agra to try and maybe open up a hidden power within the three of them to make like the ultimate dream fast to connect with all the Gelflings. I just think that would
Yeah,
have made a little bit more sense for me than just looking for a sword.
probably. But I think they were probably just going for a cool factor. Like, oh, we got to find a sword now. That's really cool.
Let's make puppets play with swords and just let everybody go ooh and ah at the effects that we're making here.
Yeah, that's probably all it was.
Hmm.
We should probably also talk about the hunter.
Oh, I mean, what else is there to say? I mean, honestly, I don't want to talk about the hunter. I want him to be a surprise for everybody. All I can say is that there's a character, he's a Skeksis, he's the hunter. Just wait for him to show up. He's going to terrify you.
Yeah, I I didn't expect anything like that, and I loved it.
Yeah, he was the Dark Crystal Mythos' Boba Fett. That's who he is. He is Boba Fett.
Yeah, kinda. I never thought about that, but yeah, I can see that totally.
Yeah, he's even though he is a little bit more of a talker than Boba Fett, but like he is that creature of mystery that just focuses on his mission, and he's going to go through hell or high water to accomplish it. That's what he
Hmm.
did.
Yeah, that's a really good comparison.
I mean, the original movie was, I believe, Rick McCallum was part of the production, or someone from Star Wars actually was linked to the Dark Crystal. But no, I mean, like sometimes you just gotta pull from other strong fantasy franchises in order to
Hmm.
make yours work. Not necessarily rip them off per se, but it's those mannerisms that connect with the watchers and the fans. That's what works.
Yeah, people always talk about reusing tropes as if it's something bad, but as long as you can remix and rewrite and you make it your own, I have no problem with people reusing tropes from things that already worked. Like,
Yeah.
just be creative, tell a good story. That's what matters.
Yeah, I mean, like the three main Gelflings, you know, I mean, like you've seen those tropes used so many times. Like you have the dreamer, the rule breaker, and the one that is afraid to follow the right path. You know, that's basically what you get with those three.
Yeah,
And like you've seen that so many times before. And I mean, like it's the freaking hero's journey. That thing has been recycled in so many different ways. But like you
yeah.
said, you got to get a good story behind it in order for people to get on board with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the few things that I really like about this story, even though I'm sure they wouldn't do it because of the fact that it's really more for a younger audience, is I like the fact that there really isn't much romance in it.
Yeah, you get kind of hints. I think there's some hints between Rian and Deet,
Hmm.
but it doesn't really go anywhere,
Yeah.
and I'm fine with that.
Yeah,
I,
I also think that Hup has a little crush on Deet.
yes, yeah. That's the one I think will probably not go anywhere because they're two different species. But
But again, you know, if Kira was raised by the Podlings, there's got to be something that happens in the
there could be a
past that
connection. Yeah.
creates a stronger bond between the two species.
Yeah. Yeah. Who knows? I really hope we get a season 2 so we can find out more of this stuff.
Yeah, because we've only scratched the surface. I mean, I loved the fact that at the end, closer to the end of the show, we see the resistance forming. You can see that the Skeksis are starting to realize that their time is coming. And the other interesting thing is the fact that we find out about the shard.
Yeah, there's so much more that we need to learn.
Yeah.
And as much as I appreciate when they continue series that get canceled as like books or comic books or audio dramas or whatever, I just really like it better if we just get the series being told as the series that they envisioned in the first place instead
Yeah.
of being forced to branch off into another medium because you get canceled by the network.
Yeah. And I mean, I've looked at the ratings of Age of Resistance and all the people who watch it. Like the ratings are sky high. People really, really liked the show. And I think that even though I know the one problem right now with Netflix is starting to feel a little bit of a money crunch just
Mm,
because of the fact that all of these streaming services are now officially starting up. I mean, this year alone, we've got HBO and Peacock starting up, so that's going to be more competition for Netflix.
mm-hmm.
But I've got to look at this from a logical standpoint. If you want your subscribers to stick with you, then you have to keep cranking out more of what is working. Clearly, you have to
Mm-hmm.
continue creating seasons of Stranger Things. You have to give us more of the toys that made us. You know, people like that show on Netflix. Give us more of those DreamWorks Tales of Arcadia shows from Guillermo del Toro. There's a third season in the works right now. Give them more of Age of Resistance. Give them more of all of these shows that have such high ratings that people continue to watch. That will keep the subscribers watching.
Yeah, I agree, but I'm still afraid that Netflix is just going to start doing what other networks do and start canceling things that don't perform exactly like they want. Because they've already
Well,
done that with a few shows, and I don't I don't know how to see the different ratings for things, but I know one of my favorite shows, even though I feel like I'm probably in the minority, I loved the OA. It was so
okay.
bizarre and weird, but it got canceled after season 2.
Mhm.
And even though it ended on a cliffhanger, I still feel the cliffhanger was weird enough that I feel like they did it on purpose. Like, if we're going to go out, we're going to go out in the weirdest way possible.
Okay.
So I'm sort of okay with it, but it still makes me fear for different Netflix series. Like, if they're going to cancel things that are ending on a cliffhanger like the networks do, I'm still afraid for Age of Resistance. Like, I'm
Well,
not going to be not afraid until they announce a renewal.
you know, that's unfortunately what television has always been. And if this is
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be the new age of television, then we're not going to change it. It's not going to change. I mean, it's unfortunate that that's the way that networks do it. I mean, just imagine, I mean, look, I didn't watch it when it aired, but you know how you probably heard how many people got pissed off when they canceled Firefly. I mean,
Mm,
people loved Firefly, but we ended up getting the closure in the film Serenity, which is a fantastic movie. So sometimes it can work and sometimes it can't. But that's the other thing. It's like if you're just going to keep making a show that's not getting watched, even if one person is watching, it's not going to matter to the big picture for everybody. One
mhm.
viewer is not going to change their minds, and it's sad, unfortunately. But at the same time, the other problem is this show is so popular. Let's keep it going. You know, you can't. You know, like
Mhm.
the Simpsons is in its 31st year, and it's got like 25% of the viewership that it used to, but they're still making more. And I don't understand why. I think it's time for The Simpsons to finally end.
Yeah, I've only watched like a handful of episodes of The Simpsons, and I don't really understand the appeal. Maybe I haven't watched the right episodes, but like I'm shocked that it's lasted as long as it has.
Yeah.
That's probably about all we've got for the show. I don't want to talk too much about like how it ends or anything because I want people to watch it for themselves if they
I
have.
agree. I agree. We can only give them a taste. Only give them that carrot. Don't give them any more than that. Everybody, you've got to check this show out. If you
Yeah.
are fans of anything that is of science fiction and fantasy, but more importantly, if you love Jim Henson stuff, this is a show you have to watch. They really went out of their way to try and capture the Jim Henson magic for
Hmm.
this show. They really did. And I was very happy about that.
Yeah, definitely. If you like anything Jim Henson and you haven't watched the show yet, you need to.
Yeah, and for some strange reason, you know, a lot of Jim Henson work that came out after he passed away, except for Dinosaurs, they all managed never to get past one season. So, like you, I'm waiting on bated breath for season 2 because
Hmm.
I liked that last Muppet show that was on ABC that was just called The
Yeah,
Muppets, where they made it a mockumentary. I
yeah,
thought it was funny. I really
yeah.
liked it.
I liked it at the beginning, and by the end, I feel like it was finally starting to find its footing for real. It just kept getting better and better, and then it got canceled.
Yeah, and you know something, that show still has not gotten released on Blu-ray or DVD, and it's such a shame because I want
Mm,
to own that season because I could watch it over and over again. It was really, really funny. And I
yeah.
also thought it was interesting to actually see them in a mockumentary kind of show. It was very
Hmm.
funny. Very, very funny.
Yeah. I wonder if that one's on Disney Plus.
If it is, that would be pretty awesome.
It is.
Oh, awesome.
So now you have a reason to get Disney Plus.
Well, I need at least 10 reasons, not just one.
How many Muppet movies are on there?
I have the first 3. So
Oh,
I'm good. I'm good.
yeah.
The only other one that I wouldn't mind owning, but I'm still somewhat on the fence about it, is Muppets in Space.
I think I have that one. I think I have all of them.
And I do have the first 3 seasons of The Muppet Show, but of course, they never made the last 2 seasons on
Yeah.
DVD.
Yeah, same. I bought them
Very
as they
upset
came
about
out
that.
and they never finished.
Did you get the ones with did you get the exclusive boxes with the Muppet fluff?
Yes.
I did too. I did too.
It's so unnecessary, but like I wanted the fuzzy
No, it
ones.
is so necessary. That is as necessary as it has to be. Yeah, I really want them to put the last 2 seasons out on DVD. I really, really do.
Yeah. Especially because they're not available on Disney Plus, which seems like a huge oversight.
I don't
But
understand, because you know something, that's what a lot of people say. The problem with Disney is the fact that they have the Muppets and they really have no idea what to do with them.
yeah, that seems to be
Every
the
time
case.
they try to do something with the Muppets, it just doesn't work. And I
Hmm.
don't understand why.
Yeah, I don't know.
It is what it is. We can only hope.
Yeah. Someday they'll find somebody who can knock one out of the park, give
Yeah.
us a really good Muppet show or a really good Muppet movie.
Hmm.
Just, I hope that day comes sooner rather than later.
It's been a while. Believe me, it's been a while.
Yeah. So I guess to finish up the show, I probably can put this on the end of both episodes, but why don't you let people know where they can find you, social media handles, where they can look you up if they want more from you?
Okay, well, the best place to find me is definitely on YouTube. You can find me at The Lawn Gnome. That's not one connecting word, it's three separate words, The Lawn Gnome. And you'll notice that you found me if you see a Simpsonized version of a guy. That's me. And you can find me on Twitter at the YT Lawn Gnome, the YouTube Lawn Gnome. That's basically all my social media. I'm sort of someone who likes to be having a minimal digital footprint. I don't have Instagram or any of those other crazy things. It's basically just YouTube and Twitter, guys.
Okay, well, I will have links to all your stuff in the description, so make sure to check him out if you're looking for more.
Yeah, and I want to, and I just want to thank you. This was such a great time. I really appreciate it. I know that it took a little bit of time for us to get this off the ground, but patience is a virtue, my friend, and I think it paid off at the end.
Yeah, thanks for joining me too.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome, and I'll be more than willing to come on again if you have other interesting things to talk about that I'd be interested in as well.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to keep talking. Maybe we could do something with superhero movies one of these days.
Hey, I would love to do that. I would love to do the Bruce Timm stuff if you want.
That would be an undertaking. I would have to rewatch some of that stuff.
Let me tell you something. They're so rewatchable. It's not even funny. I think I've watched some of these movies already 5 or more times. I love them so much. I really do.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to talk about what to do next. I think
great.
Superheroes, definitely. We'll have to talk about which ones.
Sounds
There's so many to choose from.
So many, exactly. But that's what makes it great.
Okay, well, thanks for joining me. I guess we'll see you next time.
My pleasure. Have a great one.
Yeah, you too. Bye. Thanks for listening to the Disney Movie Marathon. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe and follow my co-hosts as well. My Linktree and all of our links will be in the description below. If you want more of my content, all my podcasts are available on YouTube as well as most podcast platforms. If you enjoyed this show, check out one of the other podcasts or check out my Patreon for bonus and extended episodes you won't find anywhere else. We'll be back soon with another brand new episode, so thanks for listening and we'll see you next time.